Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Aquarium of the Pacific Online Academy. My name is Alicia, and I'm excited to be joining you today. We're going to be discussing all about animal care. So behind me, we see our big tropical exhibit, and there are lots of different animals here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, and especially in our largest exhibit here that has 350,000 gallons of water and hundreds of species or hundreds of animals that we have in this exhibit. So if we just look at the diversity of animals that we have in here, have you ever wondered what it takes to care for these animals? Now, of course, they need a healthy place to live. They need to have the right foods, but sometimes they also need additional care. They need health care. So just like going to the doctor and getting a checkup, we need those same facilities here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. So we're going to be discussing what that kind of looks like, specifically talking about our animal hospital here. The animal hospital that we have is called the Molina Animal Care Center. Now, before we get into taking a tour of our facility and talking about what it takes to keep our animals, over 12,000 of them, nice and healthy here, I do want to invite you to ask questions, make comments, anything that you notice. You can always text us in. Now, for those of you who are texting in, just make sure if you are on the younger side that you have permission from your parents because normal texting rates do apply. So 562-286-1838. If you don't have an option to text in, don't worry. You can shout out your observations, write them down. You can even email us later if you decide that you have a few more at live@lbaop.org, L-I-V-E at lbaop.org. Wonderful. Now, I'm not alone in the studio. I have Amanda, who's helping with all of our controls and putting up the images that you see behind me. And I also have Stacy, who's taking all of your questions today. All right, so let's go ahead and start taking a tour of our Molina Animal Care Center. So we're looking on the inside of our care center, and this is our main exam room. What do you notice? Is there anything special about this room? So it's a nice big room. We have some places, some workspaces for our veterinary team to work. Now, just like we have in a hospital, you have your doctors and nurses. Nurses in a veterinary practice are called veterinary practice are called technicians, veterinary technicians. Maybe you have a pet at home and you've been to a veterinary office and you've been greeted by a veterinary technician to help for those that first check-in procedure or some of those exams that your pets have gone through. So the staff here are specialized in working with a huge range of animals. So that would include, of course, the fish that you saw in our first view. It can include things like our mammals that we have here at the aquarium, our birds. We even have reptiles and amphibians here. So we have a huge diversity. Not only do we have our veterinarians and our veterinary technicians, we often have interns that are working in the hospital to help check up on our animals every single day. And to partner with our veterinary team, we also have our husbandry staff members. So husbandry means animal care. And so if you're wondering, how do you take care of over 12,000 animals? Well, because we have the veterinary team and we also have our animal care team, they work very, very closely to make sure our animals are nice and healthy. All right, so we've talked a little bit about our vet team, and this is the main exam room. You might notice that we have this big table here, and this table is kind of special. We can take a close-up look at this table. And it has these hydraulics on here, meaning that this table can go all the way to the ground. And if we needed to put, like, for example, a 700-pound sea lion like Parker on top of it, we can. And those hydraulics help us lift our heaviest animals up top. So it's important for us to have equipment that can take care of the smallest of animals under our care, as well as the biggest animals in our care, like our sea lions. Now, we also have a couple other rooms here. We have a radiology room. Radiology is when we use or take x-rays or a radiograph. And we have this portable radiograph or x-ray. You can see a penguin legs. Here's a little preview of some of the things that we're going to be showing you later. Here's that little image that we're getting. So we have our table, and we can take these x-rays of our fish, and we'll show you how we do that in a little bit because it's a little tricky. There are challenges, of course, to working with animals that live in the ocean. For animals that breathe air like our penguins, it's a little easier for us to be able to take an x-ray, but for animals that are ocean dwelling, we have to make some accommodations to be able to do those x-rays for them. So if you've ever had an x-ray done before, we can also do it for our animals. And it's portable, so we can move this through the aquarium. Sometimes it's easier to take some of our equipment to our animals, kind of behind the scenes, behind their exhibits, versus having them make their way to our animal hospital. It really depends. All right, the next place I'd like to show you is our surgery suite. So sometimes we have to do surgery on our animals. Now, we do the best we can to make sure our animals stay nice and healthy, but there are times that we have to maybe fix something on the inside of our animals. So we have quite an array of equipment in here, including our surgery table that can be adjusted. You might also notice a ventilator. So again, we have a huge collection of animals. Some of those animals breathe air like us. Some of them have gills if they're air breathing like us. This ventilator helps make sure that the animal is breathing on rhythm for us so that while we're doing our surgery, that their normal breathing patterns are normal. We can also add anesthesia to that. So this is a chemical that helps put an animal asleep. So we're going to take a look a little bit later in the program at some examples of procedures and surgeries, and you'll see that some of our animals are asleep for some of those procedures. And that's usually the safest way to do some of those procedures because the animals, they don't understand what's happening to them, and it's a lot safer and less stressful if they're asleep for, let's say, a dental cleaning or an exam. And so we might give them those medications. Back here, we also have our incubator. So if we have any birds that lay an egg and they might need some extra care, we might end up raising those baby birds on our own. Most times we try to let our animals raise their own chicks, but we will step in our veterinary care team, our husbandry team, if the animals look like they need some extra help. And so we are always kind of on the ready with our heat-controlled incubator. And that's why it's closed off like that. So a mama bird who raises their egg, they usually sit on top of their eggs, right? And so they're able to keep it nice at a temperature that's really nice for those eggs. And so we're able to temperature control and make sure that those eggs are growing properly under that temperature. Now, if you had a surgery, you probably want a space to recover. Now, some of our fish, they have special places behind the scenes that they go. They have a little space just to themselves so that they can recover in peace and quiet. If you're a bird or a smaller land-dwelling animal that we have in our collection here, you might go to the Molina Animal Care Center's recovery room. So this is a special room that we have. Again, it's a little pushback. Now, if you come to visit us at the aquarium, you won't see this room. Again, it needs to be a nice, quiet space for the animals. And so you'll see some of those animals might include our birds. So if you're looking at our bird cages here, that's just a temporary house for an animal that maybe needs some medication or special care. A lot of times, the veterinary staff need to make observations and watch the progress of the animal, making sure that the animal is getting maybe those medications or is healing properly. And so we'll keep them separate so that they can't accidentally hurt themselves. So I don't know if you've ever had a cast before or if you've had any kind of procedure at the hospital before, sometimes they ask you to stay in bed or to take it easy. This is a place that our animals can take it easy. All right. Now, so besides having our different spaces in here, why would an animal be brought to the Animal Care Center? Well, I will tell you that a lot of the work that our animal care team does is what we call preventative health. We're making best efforts to make sure our animals stay healthy. And so just like for us, that might include a checkup. So again, we talked about before having a nice safe place to live. It's making sure for our fish that the water that they're breathing and swimming in is at the right requirements for them, that they're getting the nice healthy food, and then also having their annual checkups. Now, not all of our animals have a checkup at the hospital. They might have checkups just swimming around their fish homes, but some of them are brought to see our veterinary team, like our penguins. So our penguins will come in. You can see them using that exam table, and our penguins get a normal checkup. And they have our stethoscope. So in part of doing some of our checkups, and also if we do notice that there might be something wrong with our animals, we have tools. Some of these tools are what we call diagnostic tools. So a stethoscope, which we use for humans. By the way, a lot of the equipment that we use here have been adapted from human use to use for our animal friends. So we're listening to see what the heartbeat is for a penguin. Now, we have a certain heartbeat range that's healthy for us, and the animals that they're examining each have their own target heart rate. So that just depends on what kind of animal that they're looking at. So the heart rate, how many beats per minute as they call it, for a penguin can be very different from a sea lion. So these are some things that help our staff know if an animal is healthy. So this is one of the tools that they can use. So they come in for a checkup. Another animal, we've been very excited lately. We've had a lot of chicks here. We've had Avocet Chicks, which is a type of shorebird. I think we can show you some of that on our screen here. So here's some examples of these really long-legged friends. I can play this video for you. So they grew very, very quickly. They were these little poofy balls with long legs trekking around their homes for quite some time. And they grew up very quickly, and right before they started to kind of be independent and fully grown. Oh, there's one taking a bath in the back here. It was just about time for them to have an exam. So each one of our chicks went to the doctor to make sure that they were doing well. And you can see that if you were the veterinary staff, so I'll just maybe ask a question here. If you were the veterinary staff, what do you think are some things that you would look at if you're checking the health for a checkup of one of our Avocets? So again, I'll put that number up. If you think you know what we would check if we were investigating for a checkup, we'll go ahead and put our text number up there for you. Give us a moment. There you go. So I'll ask, what do you think that they might look at? What do you think our animal care team might check up if you were to take one of our little chicks into the animal hospital? So again, these are shorebirds. They're found, can be found off of our coast. They're pretty cool. They have those long bills, and they live in our exhibits here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. All right, so I think we also have a video of that exam, and we'll kind of talk through that. So we have Dr. Adams here. So this is our veterinarian, and we also have one of our aviculturists here, and she's holding our chick in a position that makes sure that the bird won't wiggle around, because birds are pretty fragile. They're a smaller animal, so she has a very special way that she's been trained to hold the bird. And Dr. Adams is just making sure that the legs of the Avocet are working just fine. So they're doing a full body exam. We're only seeing a very small piece of the exam. Did you have time to think about it? Were you thinking about maybe some of the things that they might look into? Yeah, so they might look at eyes, face, beak. Again, we looked at heartbeat, something that we're not looking at in this shot here, but right behind, we're looking at a scale. And so we often will weigh the animal, and weighing the animal is important. We also have, like I said, the radiology. So if we needed to do an x-ray, if we notice anything. Oh, some people are saying feathers. Excellent. So yeah, we would look at the wings. So they might open up one wing at a time So in this hold here that you have the bird, you would have somebody assist you, and they can open one wing at a time to make sure that those feathers are looking nice and healthy. That's a really good point. So I'm glad that you were able to, we had someone text in feathers. That's really important, right? So just like if you were to take your cat or dog in and they take a look at the coat of your cat or dog, or maybe look through the coat of your cat or dog, it's the same thing for the feathers or the outside covering. If you're examining a fish, you would look at the scales. So those are all things that you would look, the outside covering of an animal is really important. If an animal's not feeling well, you might start to see signs that the animal is not feeling well by either maybe the feathers not looking right, maybe, if we were to take a look at maybe an animal from the wild, they might get things like parasites on the outside, just like actually any animal. Cats or dogs at home could get parasites. So looking at the outside parts of an animal can show the health of that animal. In fact, I think we have an exam that we're doing on one of our fish, a procedure, to see how the outside of the fish is doing. So just like we were, here we go. So this fish is under anesthesia. So I think we actually have a quick video that we can show you of us adding some. There's a powder form. We've taken the fish. The fish is now breathing that medicine through its gills. So the gills are on the side of its body. It's starting to go to sleep. And again, this is better for the animal because the animal doesn't know what's going on, and having a little sample from the outside, and trying to wiggle around wouldn't be good for the veterinary care staff or the fish. So we will sometimes put the fish asleep. So the fish is now asleep in the doctor's hands, and then we'll take this little slide. It's a microscope slide, and they can do an outside scrape of the fish. And then we can use a diagnostic tool. So we can take a look at under a microscope. We can kind of see one of those tools. And the microscope is used for investigating anything that you can put under the microscope. Things like scales. We can look for parasites. We can look for anything that's growing on the outside of an animal. We can look closely at feathers. We can look at blood work. So we can do blood draws on animals. Sometimes we do send out our samples to an outside company to do those for us, but the microscope is a really great start for us to get that information coming in quickly for us. All right, so some of those other diagnostic tools that we can take a look at. So we looked at the anesthesia system. So again, fish breathe that through their gills, but we also have other animals that they breathe it as part of a mask that goes over. That would include like our penguins, our seals, our sea lions. We can also use an ultrasound. I think we have an example with one of our sharks getting an ultrasound. So just as the name implies, the ultrasound uses sound waves that go inside the body of an animal. They bounce back and they give us a picture of what might be inside. So if you're thinking, well, how do you get an ultrasound of a shark? Well, here you go. There's a team of people. These are our aquarists. So again, our husbandry staff members that are specifically working with our fish and invertebrates. And being that this is internal, this really helps so that here's the wand for the ultrasound, and here's that picture. So what they've done is they've taken the shark and they're able to flip the shark around so it's on its belly. It's okay. It's doing fine. It's still breathing. They actually have this tube here, and the tube goes inside the shark's mouth and pushes water through the shark's mouth and over its gills so that it can stay in that position without having to move. So some sharks have to keep swimming their whole life. And the blacktip reef shark is one of those. So if we want to keep that shark still, we have to make sure that the water is still going through its mouth and over its gills. So that's one of those complications that happen, or those challenges that happen with working with aquatic animals. You have to make sure that the animal is, for some animals it's temperature, some animals it's making sure they're breathing okay. And those are all considerations as we do any of these procedures. Okay, so Amanda has given us a picture of another patient that has come to our Molina Animal Care Center. And this is what the healthy eel is supposed to look like. You can see it has that long ribbon-shaped body to it. Unfortunately, one of our eels had a fatty growth that started to grow on the top of its head, and it needed surgery. It became very large. There you can see. So this eel is out of the water, and it has a tube, just like the shark does, that is sticking inside of its mouth. By the way, the eel is asleep, and we can kind of show you what that procedure looks like. This is another eel that's having an exam. It has a slightly smaller mass that's going to be removed. So the eel has, again, been put asleep. It has that tube in its mouth. The fish is asleep. And the water is going through its mouth, and then there's a little gill opening. So the water's actually streaming out here. Here's that eel back on exam. Maybe we'll put that that first eel picture back up. I have some questions that are coming in. So we have a question that's been asked, how long do fish sleep? Oh, that's a great question. So I'm guessing you mean for a procedure. And that really depends. Sometimes the procedures are very quick, and sometimes the procedures can be a couple of hours. And it's as long as the fish is breathing that water. So there's tiny oxygen bubbles that are inside the water that really helps. And the water, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, has the medicine constantly going through. As soon as we switch the water to be without that medication, the fish is going to wake up. And so we'll pump that water through its mouth, and then it was going into the eel's mouth and over the gills. We'll keep it asleep. And again, that can be a couple of hours. That's a really long procedure. I'm sorry, Amanda? Oh, okay. Amanda is adding to the conversation, which is wonderful. And she was saying that the longest was just over 4 hours. So as soon as the procedure was done, you saw that was a pretty big mass on the eel. So sometimes it can take a long time, and they want to make sure that they're doing it correctly. They don't have to rush through it. They can switch over and then have that kind of clean or without medication salt water going through the eel's mouth. And then the other question that came in is, how many vets work at the aquarium? That's a great question. So right now our team includes 3 veterinarians. We have Dr. Adams, Dr. Stevens, and Dr. Gerlach. And we have 1 veterinary technician, which is Julie. So, and you might see her in some of our videos here. Now, if you do go online and onto our website, you can learn all about our veterinary technician role. She has, kind of see her over here. She's done a program for us called Career Connections under our teacher resources. So if you're interested, you want to know a little bit more about career as a veterinary technician, we have a 3-part video series that you can watch kind of on demand, which is pretty cool. All right, let me tell you a little bit about another procedure, just to kind of give you an idea of some of the other things that have happened and why we might have an animal hospital here. So we have in the past rescued some penguins here, our Magellanic penguins. And so not all of our penguins are rescued, but we do have a few that are rescued. And they're rescued and deemed non-releasable, meaning that we weren't able to put them back into the ocean after rescuing because they had ongoing medical issues. And one of those issues that came up after they were rescued is something called Bumble Foot. And that's when they get sores that happen on their feet. And so here's a procedure that happened. So again, our penguin is under anesthesia. It's asleep for this procedure. And they're examining the feet. You can kind of see these sores that have happened, and the feet are very swollen. So we have to make sure that during the procedure, the animal's asleep. Again, it's much better for the animal and for our staff. And they can go ahead and treat the animal without feeling any of those kind of medications and applications that are going on. So we also will sometimes have to not only add the medicine to treat, but we'll have to, in this case, they added little booties that go over the foot of the penguin. So these were custom-made shoes to go over the feet of the penguin, and that makes sure that they stay really, really dry as well. So part of the reason why the spots were not healing is because once it gets wet, it just makes it worse. So you can see that they're using that little shoe that they've made, and they also wrap it up to make sure that it stays nice and dry. I think, do we have any other procedures that oh, we can talk about the x-ray. So again, that x-ray, you probably saw that eel earlier. So the x-ray can be given for an animal that is asleep or not asleep. So in this case, they're doing an x-ray on a penguin that is standing there. The penguin is fine coming into the animal hospital. If there was anything to be done a little bit further, they might put the penguin under anesthesia. So this will help do a checkup on their feet. Again, this is a sensitive area for them. The feet are very important, right? So this is how they move on land, is also how they swim. They use those big feet as paddles to kind of kick and push them through the water. Now, the other things that we might do for a regular checkup would include dental. Not all of our animals have teeth, but some of them really do rely on having a good set of chompers, and that would include our otters. So our otters have teeth, and they require not only a physical checkup, but they also require a dental exam. And so our veterinary technicians not only do the work of a doctor's office, but they also do the work of a dental office. So they'll clean, and if they need to, we'll bring specialists in if they need any further dental work. But they've been keeping our otters nice and healthy for a long time using that good dental hygiene. Now, I do want to point out that because sea otters have a really thick coat, and that coat keeps them nice and warm, they want to make sure that out of the water, outside of that nice cold water, they're not overheating. So these two things here are actually ice packs. And they can put those ice packs under the arms of the sea otter where the fur is just a little tiny bit thinner, and it helps keep them nice and cool. So it's closer to their blood vessels, so that cold ice pack can touch their blood vessel and keep them nice and cool. Now again, temperature is something that they have to check on when doing any procedure, especially if an animal is asleep for it. They tend to get a little bit, they can overheat or they can drop in their temperature. So they have to constantly make sure that the animal is doing okay. So here's one of our sea otters here. And there's a nice smile because our sea otter gets their teeth cleaned. Yeah, so this also happens with our, sometimes our seals and sea lions. They'll get a checkup to make sure that they're nice and healthy. So I have some video of our, is it the dental? Dental, yeah. There we go. Here is a dental happening. You can see that they have a little light attached as well. And so just like you would see for our dental cleaning, they go in and make sure that their teeth are nice and plaque-free. Ta-da! Now something also that can happen, I think we have a video of an eye exam as well. So Shelby is an older animal, and something that happens with marine mammals is that they tend to, and just any mammals over time, is that their eyesight tends to get a little worse as they get older. So it's good for them to have an eye check and make sure that they're doing okay. And so here they're using these long applicators that they're soft at the end to kind of gently open our seal's eyes. And then we have a closer look into the pupil of into the eye of our animal. So eye exams, dental exams, full body checks can all be done as the animal's asleep. All right, so we have another question that came in. Why did you let the growth on the eel get that big? So the fatty growths are benign. They're not dangerous. So we wanted to get an idea of how fast it was growing. We watched it closely. We made a lot of observations, and it basically grew very, very quickly. And so sometimes if we don't have to do surgery, it's better. But it turned out that the growth was although it wasn't dangerous for it in the beginning, it did grow very big. And so eventually it was deemed time to remove it, as it was starting to make swimming around a little bit interesting for the eel, as you can imagine. But if we don't have to do surgery for an animal, that's usually better. But because it tended to it grew very quickly, they wanted to remove that from the eel just to improve its quality of life. So there's a lot of pluses and minuses when you think about animal health care, right? We want the animal to be healthy. So those decisions have to be made kind of weighing in on overall care. And it sounds like we have another question that's coming in. So these are just a few examples because we keep our animals nice and healthy. And it's not only, again, our veterinary team that are doing the checkups, but our animal husbandry staff. So every day our animal husbandry staff are watching their particular animal collection. So if you're a mammologist, you have your mammals that you're observing. If you're an aviculturist, you're watching the birds. If you're an aquarist, you're watching our fish and invertebrates. So they have specific animals that they take care of. They get to know these animals. They keep record of these animals. And if anything changes, they can change that in their records. So those are all kept really well. That's part of the requirement for being part of an associated zoo or aquarium. So keeping records is really important, knowing the animals, making observations of the animals so that we know what is normal. You know, our animals can't just tap you on the shoulder and say, I have a stomach ache. They might do things like stop eating or hide, or maybe they're not socializing like they normally do. There are behavior changes that let us know that those animals are not feeling well. And so having that full team of people, not just in our veterinary team, but also our animal husbandry team, is very, very important. So once we know that an animal maybe isn't feeling well, that's when we can go to our animal hospital and use some of those diagnostic tools that we talked about. Maybe it's a blood sample, maybe it's an x-ray, an ultrasound, maybe it's using the stethoscope to monitor heart rate. Maybe it's using our scale to weigh an animal to see if there's been a weight change. So all of those diagnostic tools help start that investigation for why that animal might not be feeling well. But it's the teams of people that work here at the aquarium that really help us to identify and keep a regular kind of check and eye on our animals. All right, so some questions that have come in for you. That's my long pause. I apologize. Do the animals get cavities? Yes, sometimes they have to be pulled, but we try to save the teeth by doing root canals, very similar to us. And then how long do fish live in the ocean compared to the aquarium? Oh, that's a really good question. You know what? Our animals get, top food and top health care. So I'm not sure if it's been studied. I would say that I would believe that they have pretty long lives here. There's no predators, so good food, no predators, and healthcare mean a pretty healthy animal. So, you know, if an animal in its natural habitat was sick, then it might slow down and be eaten by another animal. Whereas here at the aquarium, we would notice that that animal is maybe not feeling well, as we were just talking about, and we would be able to offer medical attention. And so some of our animals, like our sea otters, can live many years past when their counterparts in the ocean would normally live. So it's kind of hard to answer that question. I don't know how many studies, but I would say that there's a lot of factors contributing to a very healthy life here at an aquarium. And then what is the largest animal that you've done surgery on? So that would be one of our sea lions, about 300 pounds. We had to do an ultrasound also on, sorry, to continue to answer that question. So first of all, we had the sea lion that was about 300 pounds. And then we've also done a procedure on the reticulated whiptail ray. It's the largest animal for a procedure. So that is, our reticulate ray is over 10 feet long and over 400 pounds, I believe it. Yeah, yeah, 6 feet from side to side, and then from the nose or the rostrum of the ray all the way to the tail. I think it was over 10 feet. It's a pretty large animal that we have here at the aquarium. And in order to move that animal, there's actually a special crane that we use behind the scenes that drops into the water that has a special net. But that animal we would only use that if we had to. So we have to have, yeah, it's inside a shark lagoon. So we have to have those plans, those protocols in place to treat a variety of animals. So again, some animals we can treat in their homes at the aquarium, maybe in a side behind the scenes area that attaches like we do in Shark Lagoon. And some of them are brought to the animal hospital. It really just depends on the animal. Great questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about animal health care, about some of the examples of animal care that we've done for our incredible diversity of animals. And we have one more program today at 2 o'clock. I hope you can join us. And don't forget, we have programs throughout the week. Thank you, everyone.